I like how yours is Pierre and I come up with mine on the fly, so I just like check.
You said some last week. I'm gonna name mine
Well, I want to hear all.
Artichoke.
Artichoke. That's a great name. The artichoke on something.
Candy.
Uh-huh.
This dude is the stone. He definitely serves on a pier.
Hey guys, volume. Come on. You can do it. I know you can do it. It's possible to be not too loud.
Chad is a stoner.
Okay, there we go. The antithesis of what he is. That's a good word there. I like that one. Word of the day. That's right.
So you got it.
What is that?
It's a hilarious picture. I seriously didn't know that frogs could ride on koi, but apparently they can. That's funny. He's riding on the koi. It's really kind of cool. Yep. Right here. It's all good. Yeah, take the trays out and stack them like you would stack papers that you don't want to get messed up. Right, left, so that they don't put them all the way outside on the. Ooh, now I'm gonna clean that. Hold on. Let me wipe that down. Hey, Alex, go ahead and take that tray outside for me, okay? And then I'm gonna wipe down where it just sat. Jackie's gonna teach right here, sticking right up there.
My mom was cooking dinner and she spilled some on Pierre.
Hey, can I take
My mom was cooking dinner, she spilled some on Pierre.
Oh no, did you just have him out in the open?
You sure you seal up these bags and stick them in the trash, right? Seal them up, trash them. Awesome.
Somebody broke.
Okay.
It was like this when I was cleaning
Yeah,
it out.
just a
and I
minute,
was
let
trying
you
to get it,
finish
like,
up.
real clean. And then like with the little scrubby toothpick, I kind of like cracked it a little. And then after I
Half
cracked it,
up, and I was doing that.
No, it's the one with purple
It's
pencil
going
top.
really well.
That is not for sex.
it really started happening when I had to take the spikes off that were kind of like left hanging on. No, never mind. I take it back. What really happened was when I was trying to get all the aerosol's lantern out, I was trying to push it out the bottom, and it was all connected, so it just started.
I cut out.
Alexa, what's the temperature?
Right now, it's 62 degrees
Great, I'm
Fahrenheit.
gonna open 2 sets of
Tonight,
windows.
it's set to low at 41 degrees.
That fish is probably look like they're having just a grand old time.
All right, I'm gonna open this door and I'm gonna open the dining room windows and get a little cross breeze through here, and it should take out any stinky that's built up.
What's your name? What's your guys' name?
Excellent. Do you see them all three?
My name's Chad. He's a stoner surfer dude who tries to surf on the pier and forgets to go in the water.
I stupid humanity. It's not super exciting, that guy. He just kind of, honestly, wait, I don't want you to remember. Wait.
If you will remember. Yeah. Except it wasn't.
That's where I got the name.
It was this dude playing GTA 5, and he was just going around and blowing up stuff, and he accidentally blew himself up. And the whole time he was having a French accent, so he's like, afterwards he was like, you know, I'm like, excellent thing, like, I will remember you. I will remember you. Oh, and it happened. Oh, that's
All right, we need to start because it's 2 minutes after, so I think we're pretty good up here, relatively well cleaned up.
You know this?
There's a bunch of.
There's brownies back there.
Yeah, there are
How
brownies.
did you not
I didn't
notice?
see it. I go back there.
We'll get them at the end. We'll be sure you take one on the way out.
She
So,
said she was actually paying attention to
I was
class.
taking very
We
good.
should start that.
alrighty, so are we ready?
Yeah.
We're almost all here. I think we're ready. Okay. So yes, you earned brownies. They're back there on the table. So when class is over, be sure you get one. And in that little tank over there, if you haven't already looked, there are 3 reptiles in there. You'll find a greedanole, who at the moment is sort of a dark brown because they do change color to some degree, depending on what their background is, like what's around them, their environment, also how warm or cold they are. So he's a little cold at the moment. So he's changed himself to a darker color so he can absorb more light, therefore more heat. There is an eastern fin. Oh, the anole is a male because they have a dewlap. It's like a fan that comes out of their neck and it's bright pink. So he's a male. The eastern fence lizard in there, she's a little chunkier and she's kind of speckledy and dark brownish black. They actually run super fast. We have one that lives in the mulch in our front yard, and that thing, every time we pull in the driveway, it stares and then it runs. They get a little bigger. That one's young. The anole's about adult size, but the eastern fence lizard head to tail will go about here. So that one's pretty young. That's a female. The males have screaming blue spots on their bellies, like metallic cobalt blue, like almost like that bluebird right there. That's my male bluebird, but slightly greener, really pretty. The females have like a little bluish by their throat. So that's a female. The last thing in there is a Decayus brown snake, which I really can't sex because I tried and it's just difficult. And they're little teeny snakes. They don't get much bigger than a pencil. They have little black dots down their back and like 2 different shades of brown, and they're not venomous. They don't really have teeth. They eat slugs, arthropods, that kind of thing. And they really love snails. That's like their favorite snack. The anoles will eat small insects, that sort of thing. So we've been putting roly-polies in there, and there's lots of snails in there, and I have cleaned it and found lots of snail shells. So somebody's eating. The anoles will, and I don't know about the eastern fence lizard yet. We just got her last night because she came out of Ozzy's mouth when my mother made him let her go, because he apparently dug till he found her and then snatched her up. My mom came in like this. God, I hope it's not dead. I hope it's not dead. So it's not dead. She's cute. She was terrified. She was completely frozen.
Obviously trying to be helpful.
Yeah, he was. Just get this thing out of here. So if you were careful with your sea urchin, you probably ended up with something kind of like this. So, cool. So this is the little Aristotle's lantern that I told you about. This is the mouthpiece, and it would be found like this in here, but deeper inside. And you can actually see where all the little spines adhered. Now, Drew's broke. He had a crack in his. Some of you guys probably had yours break too. It's not uncommon. But you can look on the inside and see these little tiny holes and everything. It's really neat to see both sides. Mine, you can really only see the outside. But I love this piece. I think it's so pretty. It's just really neat. And it's got a cool name. So anyway, that's what you were hoping to end up with. If you brought them, you can show them off, leave the jars, but take your little urchins home. They're yours. All right, so we're going to do. So we're going to do today fish, amphibians, reptiles, and systems. You guys did systems. And obviously fish, amphibians, reptiles is the way we're going for lab. So we've gone from mollusks, echinoderms, arthropods to fish, amphibians, reptiles. So next week will be what?
Mammals.
Birds. We haven't done them yet. So no, we're not doing a bird. Only the pig. Yeah.
Oink, oink.
So your homework was to find a mollusk and an arthropod and get photos. Some of you guys had upload problems. Some of you had no problem at all. I haven't looked yet because y'all had till 8 a.m. to get them in, and I'm not sure when people were putting them in. So I just let them, I'll look at them later. But what kind of mollusks did you guys find?
I think it's octopus.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Some sort of nerite snail.
Ooh, cool. Okay. You found it in your yard somewhere? Or?
Aquarium.
Aquarium. Okay.
Pet store type of aquarium.
Oh, cool. All right. Awesome.
Don't know what type of nerite snail. It was a sort of nerite snail.
Yeah,
So
some sort. Yep.
it's a nerite snail.
It's a snail. Anybody find anything outside in their yard? Yeah. What'd you find, Cole? What mollusk did you find? That's your arthropod. What mollusk did you find? And then the little pill bug or roly-poly, those are arthropods, but they're crustaceans. Remember, they're terrestrial crustaceans, which you don't find a lot. So anyway, I'll look at them. I'm excited to see what you found. So we're going to do animal systems, feeding and digestion. You know what this is? Yeah, it's a red panda. They're so cute. We have some at our zoo and they're really fun to watch, right? They are really cool. So feeding and digestion. Now we're going to go over these systems again when we get to human anatomy and stuff, which is our next unit in our last quarter. It'll be all human. Your homework is going to be very different. I'm going to send it all with you, and you're going to do every week You're going to be, it's like, I'm trusting you to do it because otherwise you're going to get overwhelmed and then you're going to bring it all back. But what we're going to do the first day is you're all going to lay on the floor on these big pieces of paper. Somebody's going to trace your body. And then you're going to every single week add a system. You can draw it in however you want, but I'm going to give you papers that will be roughly adult human sized. And you can cut out the systems. You can color them however you want. You can put them in. And you're going to label them by writing on it. And then you're going to keep a little booklet on the side where you've just taken whatever organs you've labeled and you're just going to say what its function is. And that's really all. But it's every week you're going to add to it. And if you want to put clothes on it at the end before you hand it in to me, so you don't come in here with like testes and uterus and things, hanging out, then you're welcome to do that. But it's you. So I expect to get some male ones and some female ones. So it'll be really kind of cool. Yeah. Did you have a question? Your hand was up. She's like, what?
No, I was just wondering.
How does that get out? What?
Yeah.
I was just wondering if like each day are we gonna get a name of a certain thing or
Each week you'll get a system. Just like always, your homework will be weekly, but you're not going to turn it in until you turn it in. Like the whole thing. That's going to be cool.
like a final project sort of thing?
Kind of, because you do have a final project. So this is separate.
Any final project.
Mini?
It's a manage your time, right? Remember, your final project is coming up. So obtaining food. All animals are heterotrophs, obviously.
I've already claimed Darwin for the final project.
Oh.
So we've got filter feeders. Yep, he's got Darwin. And you had something.
Bacteria.
That's right. So filter feeders, modified gills, filter food out of the water. So example here is this clam. Yep. Beautiful. Look at the interior.
That looks like
Gorgeous.
Hey,
Looks like
are you
a
the one that
party
had the
clam.
giant clam? It looks like Piper's giant clam.
You have a giant clam in an aquarium?
No.
Oh, okay. Or your shell. Like a shell of one or?
It was the one she.
There's just a
Something.
wave of confusion.
All right, yes, very much. All right, so remember these detritivores? There's your pill bug. That's what Cole found, right? These are the guys that feed on decaying stuff. We talked about these at the very beginning of the year. We're talking about ecosystems, right? Carnivores are going to eat other animals.
Lion.
Roar. Obviously, that's his job. Herbivores. Oh,
Fat
what's this?
cow.
Do you know what this is?
It's just Beaver cow.
Yeah.
Justin
Do you know what
Bieber.
kind of cow this is?
Was that the one who was on show?
It's a Highland cow. So these are the Scottish cows. They call them coos because they have a weird accent. So they call them coos, Highland coos. And they're really, that's a baby one. They're super cool. They're really neat. And then omnivores. Oh, hi. I try to include one kind of funny picture in each of these. That bear looks like he's waving. So, bears are omnivores, right? They'll eat whatever's in your trash. They'll go for fish. They'll get berries, right? Awesome.
He's waving at you.
So nutritional symbionts. Okay, so here we have parasites. One organism benefits while the other is harmed. I believe this is a tomato hornworm, and I don't know what that larva is on it, but it's obviously not doing it any good. So remember, when you talk about parasites, one benefits, the other's harmed, right? So then you've got mutualism. Both organisms benefit. So check out the spider. Yeah, but look at the spider that built a web in the middle. So how does that benefit?
Stops flies from eating.
There you go. These guys are always, I always have like cattle animals and stuff, always have long eyelashes, right? Because they're trying to get the bugs. The cows have beautiful eyelashes. They're like this long, right? Trying to get the bugs out of their eyes. So this is kind of a weird situation, but and it's got it all over his face too, which probably isn't super comfortable. But this little spider here is actually helping out this dude because he's keeping bugs away from him and catching them. And then he gets to eat. That's pretty cool. Yep. So processing food. So we have a couple different kinds of digestion. We have intracellular. That's an amoeba. Remember how they went through this process where they kind of grew their little pseudopods around something and enveloped it. Do you know what that's called, that process? When a cell does that. It's called phagocytosis. So phagocytosis, they go in and they basically envelop something into a little bubble and eat it. And you have cells in your immune system that do that. Thank goodness, because we would be in a bad way if we didn't. So this is food digested in specialized cells. They pass nutrients to other cells by diffusion. This was the best example to get a picture of, but within a multi-cellular organism, they're going to pass that nutrition on. And this unicellular, they're just going to keep it for themselves. So we have extracellular digestion. This is food broken down outside of cells in a digestive system, and then it's absorbed, right? In a system, that's what you've got. And then we have these gastrovascular cavities. This is what some of these, what's this guy?
Jellyfish.
Is a jelly, right? Jelly, jelly, jelly. Try not to say fish. So these guys are the ones that we talked about that can pull animals that they're eating like into a cavity, and they digest it. And there's lots of capillaries, or not quite capillaries, but there's little it's part of their vascular system, even though they don't have much of one, that come right to where the food is being digested and they absorb the nutrients from it. So they don't really have like a complex system like we do with different organs. They just kind of bring everything into one cavity. So these are present in invertebrates, and they have like an interior body space, like we said, with tissues that carry out digestive functions, single opening, and cells that line it absorb nutrients. So they've got absorptive cells, they pass it along through their little systems. And then you've got digestive tracts, which is of course what your more evolved animals have. So this is most vertebrates, some invertebrates, and through a tube, 2 separate openings. That tube is the alimentary canal. Remember, mouth to anus tube. It's one tube, right? That goes in one end, it's going to come out the other. That's the idea. Unless it goes in the wrong end, then it's probably not going to come out the other. Thank goodness, because that would be awful. So your food moves in one direction, hopefully. Mouth to anus, and that's the peristalsis. That's when you've got one muscle here, this muscle is relaxed, this muscle is contracted, and then it switches. The one beneath it would be the one that's relaxed. And it's just like if you were trying to squeeze anything through a tube. Like I'm trying to think of when you might do that. I don't know when you might do that. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Like a Go-Gurt. Go-Gurt's a good example. Squeeze the Go-Gurt down one step at a time. All right, so we have specializations for different diets. So we've got, I love that one. That's a great one. So we have specialized mouth parts. So carnivores have incisors and canines. So your incisors are these front teeth, right? You've got 4 on top and 4 on bottom if you've got all your adult teeth. I do know somebody who's missing second incisors, top and bottom, just doesn't have them. And then your canines, you have canines too, right? These are here, right? No, you missing some? There you go.
I lost them. I'm waiting.
Oh, do you have the adult ones in? Nope, they're just not there.
Yeah, Piper lost her incisors.
See, that's like the guy I know who's missing second incisors. They're just not there. So the options for him are either move all your teeth forward, kind of reshape the bottom of them. They can sand or buff them and reshape the bottom of them so it's not so obvious, or spread them out and drill implants into the bone. So there's multiple ways to go about it. So this guy is an herbivore, right? So he doesn't have, see, he's missing all the nice sharp teeth. And if you look real close, kind of hard to see in that part. I love screaming. I could watch screaming goat YouTube videos all day long. I know that's ridiculous, but they're hilarious to me. They're just, But you see his teeth are all flat all the way back. Even his molars are all flat on top. Because what is this guy supposed to eat? I mean, a goat will eat. Yeah, but y'all know a goat will eat anything, right? So when I was a kid in Virginia Beach, there was this used car dealership called Charlie Falk. Okay. And anybody that grew up in Virginia Beach between the 80s and the 90s still knows this. It's a thing. So the guy would come on the screen and there would be a little white goat next to him. And this goat had like no horns and his ears were small and it looked kind of demented anyway. And it was next to him. And the whole shtick of the car dealership is that your credit report didn't matter. All those ladybugs are back this time of day. I don't know where they come from. I have cleaned back there 4 times. Anyway, there. And I've put them in there hoping that the anole would eat them, but they haven't eaten them, which makes me think that because they're not indigenous, they won't eat them. Great. Anyway, this man, and you talk about how your credit didn't matter, bad credit, whatever. And he would say, is this your credit report? And he would hold up your, this credit report and he would feed it to the goat, and the goat would eat the paper. You know how they do that? Their mouths do this, and that goat ate the paper. So it's funny because I bet when Jason comes down, you could ask him, like, what was in the Charlie Falk commercials? He'd be like, the goat that ate the paper. I mean, it was just a thing. Everybody saw it. It was ridiculous. So then we've also got specialized digestive tracts. So here's your bunny. All right. He's an herbivore.
It's a weird root system.
Yeah, right. Compared to your carnivore. All right. So anything that's an herbivore is going to have a much longer digestive tract compared to a carnivore. Why do you think that is?
It takes longer to
What do you think, Piper?
To get more nutrients out of the plants.
And why is it so much longer? Why does it take so much longer?
Because it's more easily accessible in animal tissue than in plant tissue.
Right. So there's kind of 2 reasons. What are plants composed of? What's cell walls composed of? Cellulose. Is it digestible? No. So you're going to need a long time to work your way through, and it's going to take a lot of work to break down the plant material. Also, if you think about your pyramid, your energy pyramid, which one of these is going to have more energy, a meat or a herbivore, like a carnivore or herbivore? Which diet is going to have, how am I saying this? Which food is going to have more energy in it, meat or some kind of a plant?
Meat.
Yeah, right. So it doesn't need to be as long because he's getting the energy out of it more quickly than in this case, it's going to take a long, long time. So if you can see, they're very, very different. So you've got carnivores with short digestive tracts, and they have meat enzymes that break down meat tissue. Hey, come on in. Welcome back. And then you've got herbivores that have long intestines, and they have some microbial symbiotes in there that help them digest the cellulose. So I think there's still some seats back there if you're looking for it.
Against the wall on the.
Oh yeah, there's chairs right there. So, and there's a spot next to Shannon too. Yeah, that's my female. That's my female. So that the bluebird box out there, I have a nesting pair. They usually have 2 broods every summer. And this last summer, at least their second brood of offspring had 5, I think they had 4 the first time and 5 the second time. And they've all come back. Like all the babies have come back and they poke their little heads in there like, oh, I was born here. I don't know what they're thinking, but they're coming back it's really cool. So they're fun to watch. All right, so respiration. I like that when you can actually see the respiration because it's cold outside. So we've got the function of a respiratory system is to provide oxygen gas needed for cellular respiration and to remove carbon dioxide. So in invertebrate organisms, you have things like gills and tracheae. Now tracheae are like remember the little holes we talked about with spicules and stuff in the exoskeletons of arthropods? Similar process, ways to get water, water out, but mostly gas exchange. And then with vertebrates, you have all kinds of organs that make up a respiratory system. Like you can clearly see the nostrils, right, on this guy. Yeah, dude. I love that guy. It's the best. The counter has not been wiped down, girls, so you may want to be careful what you put because it may end up smelling like Yep.
Frog and fish.
And you got a little dog nose right here.
Especially on this end.
Yeah. So here's the thing to watch, though. You can see that these systems are very different. So hang on. You got a human system here. So here you've got your trachea and your bronchial. The bronchi are these 2 branches, and then these are bronchioles, right? And they branch out, and your lungs are up here, kind of in the front. Well, in the horse, they're in a similar position, but they kind of branch upward. And their noses are different. Look at the noses. Like a dog's nose has this sort of septum down the middle. We don't really have a septum. We do have a septum. It's cartilage, but ours isn't divided externally like that, right? And their noses are typically wet. And that's because they're very, very sensitive. This is a chemosensory organ, right? It's the way that you sense chemical, be it on a surface, in the air, everything you smell, you're smelling chemicals. So it's chemosensory organ. And it's also how they breathe. Now, dogs will breathe through their mouth too, but that's mainly how they breathe. Now, you know these guys are going to come up to the surface, right? Because as much as they spend time underwater, they need to come up to breathe. What's this?
Lungs.
Well, your lungs are right here.
That's your liver.
That's your diaphragm, right? It sits right above your liver. It's your diaphragm. So your diaphragm is what allows you to breathe. And it is one of those muscles that is both you don't think about it work on its own, and also you can think about it.
Autonomous, and I
Yeah.
don't know the other one.
Yep, exactly. So it's under your control or it's not under your control. If you're asleep, your diaphragm is still working, but you can also stop and think, oh, I'm gonna take a deep breath. So that's one of the, we'll get to those systems when we get to human. But the way your diaphragm works is it actually, when it pulls down, it creates a vacuum in your lungs and that pulls air in. So that's kind of your function. So you've got nose, mouth, pharynx. Remember, your pharynx is everything from where your mouth and the back of your nose connect in your throat to where they divide into digestive and respiratory systems right around in here, right? And have you ever had the wonderful experience of like putting something in your mouth and then sneezing and having it come out your nose? because your pharynx is all connected. I did that once with Cheerios and it was the worst thing
I
ever.
think I've done it with scrambled eggs.
Yeah,
before.
you ever seen people do it with yarn or whatever? There's people that do it as a trick. They put a string through and they'll like run it through their nose. It's really gross. Yeah.
A comedian I listened to was like, one time was like, my nephew can snort a noodle up his
Yep.
nose, pull it out of his mouth. He
Yep.
says he's flossing his
Yeah,
brain.
some people
I'm
can
like,
do that. Yeah.
"Genius."
And it's also, your eyes are somewhat connected too, because all this area in here is somewhat connected. So like, if you ever have like a scratch on your cornea or anything, they'll put dye in your eyes. It's like a yellow dye, but it's fluorescent really. And they'll bring in a black light called a Woods light, and they can use that to look at your eyes, and they can see damage under the fluorescent light. But at the same time, when you blow your nose, it's bright yellow because it's all kind of connected in there. So respiration in animals. So whether they live in water or on land, they have to respire. We all have to respire. So it means to take in oxygen, give off carbon dioxide. That's the process. So some rely on simple diffusion through their skin, like we talked about the frog doing that. And others have large developed complex organ systems for respiration. So those frogs, their skin that you had today, they can breathe somewhat through their skin. They can absorb all kinds of stuff through their skin. So this is why they're what we call an indicator species, frogs and salamanders. Do you know what that is?
They can detect changes in the environment.
Yeah. So if there's a change in the environment, like say chemicals from a factory spilling into a stream, and your frogs and salamanders are dying, that's the first part of your food chain or your entire ecosystem that's getting affected. That's because they're so exposed to the atmosphere and the environment around them. Uh-huh.
Should it be wild because of the period?
Where?
That last sentence, should it start with wild?
Others have developed.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it shouldn't be. There shouldn't be a period. You're right. I cut and pasted this from something, but I didn't catch that. I guess that's your first. All right. So respiratory systems. So respiration involves diffusion. So respiration requires diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide across cell membranes. So in your lungs, this happens in your alveoli, which are these little pouches at the very, very end of your bronchial tubes. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you get to these little bubbly like pouches. And it's basically one cell layer thick. And those cells, their job is to put carbon dioxide out and oxygen in. So diffusion is passive. So think, oh, what'd you find?
Occurs if different concentrations of
O2.
oxygen or carbon dioxide on either side.
Of membrane. What's wrong with it?
Wouldn't there be like R or is in between CO2 and R?
You're really trying to get some
No,
sense.
because these aren't even sentences, they're just phrases. So if you remember how passive diffusion works, it's about having a balance on one side and the other side. So if you have more carbon dioxide on one side, it's going to move over here. If you have more oxygen on one side, it's going to move over here. It's like osmosis. It's very similar to how osmosis works. So that's what's going on in your lungs. So if you've got your different concentrations, they're going to balance out. And obviously, if say you're running, like Michael went for a run this morning, say you're running, or Jason went for a long bike ride, you're working hard, you're going to need more oxygen. The blood coming up to those cells on the exterior part of those alveoli is going to be way more carbon dioxide. So it's going to make you bring in more oxygen, which is going to make you start breathing harder. Like your body will react to that and start breathing harder, push more oxygen in. So respiratory organs tend to have large surface areas. Your lungs have a ridiculously large surface area. I don't even know what it would be if you could break it down, but you're talking about alveoli getting down to one cell layer thick. And if you want to see something fun, you can watch some YouTube videos where they can take lungs that leak out of cadavers or that have been preserved or whatever, and they can squeeze them. It's like a sponge. It's incredible the amount of stuff that comes out. When I was in high school, I did one of those Boy Scouts Explorers programs that anybody can do. And I was at Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia. And we did the cadaver lab for several weeks, which was really kind of cool. But I brought my best friend because she was a smoker, and we could bring guests on occasion. And I was like, you're coming with me, because they had a cadaver in there that had been a lifetime smoker. And you could compare the lungs of non-smoker to this. It was painfully obvious. They were black and purple and gross. And yeah.
I'm just saying, one of the voices is moist. Straight moist.
Moist. Yep, they're moist, selectively permeable.
Respiratory organs have moist.
Yep,
Yes.
they're moist.
Respiratory organs have selectively permeable.
Could have taken hat out. So
Have-
balance of concentrations of oxygen and CO2 on either side is the goal here. And specialized structures. So aquatic animals are going to have gills. We saw that today. And then obviously spiracles in terrestrial insects, and then lungs in terrestrial vertebrates for the most part. So, yeah.
Especially by the last slide. So-
Yeah,
So on top, that, is that an axolotl?
Yeah.
yeah, it's an axolotl.
Is that their word for it?
You know that, I don't know, that might be similar to an axolotl. It might not actually be an axolotl. It might be very similar.
Yeah.
Could be. I don't know if they actually call them mud puppies or not. That could be. I don't know, but it's cute.
It's
Whatever it
a
is.
puppy that's covered in mud, obviously.
I like axolotls. They're adorable. I saw a YouTube, no, real, where some guy had an axolotl and was trying to feed it. It was like in a bin, like a white, like this bin just shove under your bed. It was, it was just sitting there in the water, but it was big. It was a big axolotl. It was really cool. So countercurrent exchange, you got your venous blood going one way, your arterial blood going another way, and then you've got this little membrane that's balancing out. That's what's going on in your respiratory systems. So in the aquatic invertebrates have naturally moist respiratory surfaces and some moist again, and some animals simply allow gases to diffuse through their skins, like jellies and anemones. There's your axolotl. I love that one. Look at the face. Look at the face. So cute. So obviously this dude's got gills, right? And its gills are all kind of hanging out, unlike the fish. So some larger invertebrates and chordates, especially, I should say a larger vertebrate, aquatic invertebrates, I should say vertebrates, except mammals and, exchange O2 and CO2 through gills. Gills are organs that have lots of blood vessels, bring blood close to the surface for gas exchange. And there's what the gills kind of look like in your fish today. Ours were sort of gray.
Yeah, ours were not that.
They would be this, they would look more like this if it was alive.
And they
But, yeah.
weren't that, I didn't see that many of them.
They were, mine had at least 4. You have to, they're very thin, Kolsch. They're very thin. So, and they're very compressed.
Together.
So it was hard to get them to, but I was carefully piecing mine apart. I think mine had at least 4, it may have had 5, but that's really neat.
Or is it 18?
We didn't actually.
A beef?
dissect our-
No.
Of what?
So your water's gonna flow over the gills and all these little exposed surfaces right there. All those exposed surfaces, that's a lot of surface area to absorb oxygen and remove carbon dioxide. Yeah.
I'm trying to find the age. Is it the gills on top of each other, or is it the lines on the gills?
Scales.
The scales is not exactly.
Um,
Was it the scales exactly like how many?
it had little ridges, almost like a tree. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at that. Actually, it's a gill.
Yeah, it's a gill. So yeah. All right. So terrestrial invertebrates. So here's your spider. So terrestrial invertebrates have respiratory surfaces covered with water and mucus sometimes, depends on them. And like a worm, earthworm is a great example, right? And there are many different specialized respiratory systems in terrestrial invertebrates. So spiders use what are called parallel book lungs. Why are they called book lungs? Well, look
They
at
look
them.
Like a book.
They look like books on a shelf. Book lungs, kind of cool.
I think humans also have mucus in their lungs.
Yeah, we do. That's why we cough it up when we're sick and it's grody. Oh, come on. It's grody. So insects, sorry, I was talking about the 80s earlier, it just stuck with me. So insects use openings called spiracles, right? Where you got air that's entering the bodies, passing through these little tracheal tubes. So they're itty bitty little holes. And then they get into a system that looks kind of like so. And then lastly, you've got snails. Look at the snails. We got snails in the little box over there. So they have that mantle cavity and it's lined with their moist tissue, extensive surface area, blood vessels. So basically most of these guys are going to breathe either through an exoskeleton or through skin.
No, snails cannot remove their shell, right?
Not supposed to,
Okay.
but I mean, you can pull them out, but they're not happy at all if you do that.
So does all that come with them?
This is what's all inside the shell, this whole system. It's like a big massive tissue that kind of wraps into the shell. It coils around even if the shell is coiled. And they'll build that shell with their own, basically, they excrete the chemical and it starts to build the structure. It's really kind of cool. And snails will do something called estivation, which I learned about when I ordered those illegal snails from Ukraine about 4 years ago that I didn't mean to do. Well, we wanted snails for a lab. And so I went online to try and find big snails. And I found these big snails. They're like this big, they're huge, right?
Yeah.
And it was an Etsy page. And so I ordered them, and then the dude speaking to me in broken English, and he had a name like, I don't know, it was Vladimir or Ivan or something that was kind of, Russianish. And then so when they actually shipped to me, I got the little shipping tracking thing, and they were coming from Ukraine. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm shipping live animals from another country. I'm pretty sure that's illegal. So then I was terrified customs was going to come get me, but they didn't. But I learned when they arrived, they do this thing called estivation, where it's almost like hibernation, but not the same process, but the same idea.
Yeah.
But they'll seal themselves in their shells. They actually build this like white material tissue,
Wow.
and it's like a lid, like they seal themselves inside. And you can wake them up by spraying them with a water bottle and jiggling them around. They'll come out. It's weird. Yeah.
I'm not sure if mantle, it just looked differently spelled than normal mantle. I'm not sure if there is another.
Yeah. This is one of those like European versus American spellings. Isn't that fun?
Like color.
Just like
It's-
color.
I
Yeah.
can't they just say color?
Misspelled.
Yeah.
Just,
Looks weird. Yep.
Even British people like.
So vertebrate respiratory system. So chordates have one of two basic structures for respiration. Remember, you're a chordate. So which of these do you have? Gills for aquatic chordates, or these are things like tunicates, fish, and amphibians, or lungs for terrestrial. So which do you have?
Gills.
You actually have both. At one point you had gills.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
See?
So then we have lungs primarily. So as you move from amphibians towards mammals, the surface area of lungs increases, and it ensures a greater amount of gas exchange or two-way flow. So you saw your frog's lungs today. You compare that to the rest of the size of their body, they're relatively small. And he doesn't have like a big diaphragm, a big, like we do. So you see that as you move along the phylogenetic tree.
I don't think we found the diaphragm.
No, because they don't have that.
Instead, we cut open, just got everything else.
Yep. And so here is a bird. If you wonder what bird lungs look like, they're really kind of cool. So birds have lungs and air sacs. They're two different structures that they use. So they each have a one-way flow of air. So it allows for them to have constant contact with fresh air. And it enables them to fly at high altitudes where there's less oxygen. So that's how they get up there. It's pretty cool. And also they need a lot of air because they sing, right, all the time.
Where does the carbon dioxide go?
So basically it's going to come, the air, wait, hang on. It's been a long time since I looked at these. Oh, they do kind of breathe it back out, but it's like, it doesn't cross the same membrane. Like we have the same membrane.
Yeah.
They don't have the same membrane. So your human system, so we've got major parts, and we're going to go over this again when we do human anatomy next unit, which is next quarter. But we've got, who's texting me? Do I care? No. So we've got trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. This is how your lungs break down. Trachea, right? This is the big part. Remember I told you the thing on top is called epiglottis, similar to the little glottis in the frog. It's what separates your respiratory and digestive tubes, because your pharynx is one tube. You don't want to swallow air. You don't want to breathe spaghetti. I did not touch you. So those break down into bronchi, which are your two big branches, right here and here, and then bronchioles, which are even smaller. If you think about the way a tree grows, this is very similar. If you think about broccoli, I used broccoli once as an example because it's very, very similar. If you were to imagine the structure of broccoli starting right here and branching off, it's very similar. And your alveoli are these little tiny guys right here, and see they've got little capillaries all over them. And they're like one cell thick. So they're really picking up all your gas exchange. So your gas exchange at the lungs and in the body cells moves oxygen into cells, carbon dioxide out. And your alveoli air sacs in the lungs allow the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So oxygen can enter the bloodstream because you want it.
So there's a lot of alveoles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Tons. And they're itty bitty. So because they've got, this is capillary, so it tells you how itty bitty they are, these tiny little sacs. You can think of almost like grapes or like a broccoli. Broccoli has all those little tiny flowers on top, right?
Yeah.
That's actually what you're eating, those little buds almost.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. So in respiratory systems, gas exchange occurs through passive diffusion, just like osmosis, same process. So, yep, substances diffuse from higher concentration to lower concentration. So gases diffuse gas is diffused most efficiently across moist membranes, right? Obviously, because this is why your amphibians, I mean, it's going through their skin, right? It's moist and slimy. So respiratory structures
Yeah, we
have
found
selective,
that out.
huh?
We found that it was moist and slimy.
Yeah, it was. They have selectively permeable membranes, and respiratory structures maintain a difference in relative concentrations. They're trying to get your carbon dioxide and oxygen balanced. You are breathing, the nitrogen is in the air more than anything, right? So it goes in, but your body doesn't care about it. It's not what it's using. Circulation, fun times. Which cells are these?
Red blood cells.
Red blood cells. Yep, your little flattened,
Not quite donuts.
not quite donuts.
Yeah.
You got tons of other stuff in there. Like if this were a real artery or vein, there would be all kinds of other cells with these, all kinds.
White blood cells,
Mhm.
platelets.
Yeah. And then your plasma is the fluid in between. Have you ever seen a little, when they take blood with a little capillary tube, that little tiny glass tube, and then they put it in the centrifuge, and it'll have layers. It'll have like red blood cells, white blood cells, plasma. They actually spin it and the heavier particles go to the bottom, and you can see it in layers. It's really cool.
Maybe.
I know how it works. Yeah. I know.
It's really cool. Yeah, that's how they tell if you're anemic, because they know how, like if you were to measure it with a ruler, they know how high your red blood cells should go. And if they don't go high enough, they're like, you've got some anemia issues.
Eat more iron.
Yeah. So functions of the circulatory
Take
system.
this nail, eat it.
So you're saying circulatory system isn't just moving oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. It's actually moving all kinds of materials around. So it's going through multiple organs. If you look here, you've got the lungs and the heart, which are doing obviously the gas exchange portion, but you've also got arteries going into your liver and veins coming out, and arteries going into your gut and coming out. Those are going to go through your liver. Why is that, you suppose? What's your liver do?
That's the filter of blood.
It's a major filter. Yeah, so it's going to filter blood specifically that comes from your digestive system. So if you've got veins leaving your small intestine or whatnot, they're going to go through your liver first, because your liver is part of your filter. And then all your blood's going through your kidneys, because that is your major filter. Your kidneys are a huge filter for your body. So this is why people who like drink too much alcohol have liver failure, then kidney failure can cause major concerns. People that are on dialysis, basically, it's like a manufactured kidney. That's really what the machine is. So they run your blood through the machine and back into your body, and that machine basically takes the place of a kidney. So it's not a fun thing to do, because most people that are on dialysis have to go very regularly. And that's why you see so many of them. You see little dialysis places all over the place, because people go in and they hook up, one in, one out. We have a friend that gives platelets almost every week. And that's also a one in, one out situation. They take blood out of one arm, they run it through, they take platelets out, they take it back in the other arm. So he gives a lot of platelets. So they don't have to like take your blood, like if you do a blood donation, they actually put your blood back in just with less platelets. Kind of cool.
And you just won't scab as well.
I think it will, but for people that are really low on platelets, people have like bleeding disorders or whatever, it's essential to have more if you can get them right. So you're dealing with nutrients from digested food, obviously your gas exchange, your waste materials coming out. Your kidneys are taking waste materials out of your blood. Then what happens to the waste materials?
It's urinary tract.
Yeah, you pee them out. That's where it comes from. So it's going to go through your kidneys, and then your ureters are going to come down from each kidney into your urinary bladder. So that's how you're getting waste out through your kidneys. And then you've got hormones that move around from your endocrine system. You've got enzymes that move around your digestive system and other parts of your body. You've got immune system functions. All your immune cells are using your circulatory system to get from one place to another. And then you got homeostasis for your whole body. And your blood, whether it's alkaline or basic, alkaline or acidic, that has to come through these organs. It's all part of that. And then heat transport. Think about that. If you're cold, you're going to get a lot of actually constriction of your capillaries, and then your feet are going to get colder. You ever have your feet really cold? You come in and put them in warm water, and it's like, you feel it. It's because it's causing all of your blood vessels to expand quickly, and it doesn't feel good. So animal circulatory systems, we got types. We've got gastrovascular, obviously these mollusk types. We talked about this. Open. So this is what an open circulatory system is. Some of the insects and some of the invertebrates that we talked about had this kind of a system. So basically, you've got like this open body cavity. You've got fluid that goes through the heart and then back into this open cavity. So it's not really going through a system where it's all closed. The only place where our circulatory system exchanges is at the ends of capillaries where it's one cell thick, very small. So it all stays within one system, and then it jumps basically from one membrane to the next. And then you've also got closed. That's what we're talking about. So this one here, this is a 4-chambered heart. How many chambers did your little frog have today? 3. So this is a 4-chambered heart. This is what you have. So your blood's going to come in right there. This is going to fall into here. This pumps hard, goes up into the lungs, right? It's going to come back down into this one where it's just going to fall. And then this one's going to pump it hard and it's going to go back around again. So vascular systems, arteries, veins, capillaries. So in your frog, what color were your arteries? Yeah, that pinkish red. And then your veins were blue. And that's pretty much always how they're done in diagrams. So it's pretty, what's the word I want? Oh, shoot, it just left me.
Handy.
No, I was just going to say, oh, it's regular. It's fun. What's the word I want? Huh? No. Like it's dependable. Yeah, common. I don't know. I had a word anyway. Poof, right away. So Cnidarian, standard, that's a good one. Yeah, standard's a good one. So your Cnidarian gastrovascular systems, we talked about these when we did Cnidarians, right? So they've got no real system, one opening, central cavity, walls are about 2 cell layers thick, and that's stuff like Cnidarian, flatworms, and planarians, and all that. And then here we have,
Jellies.
yeah, jellies. So for larger, more active animals, some form more efficient circulatory systems is necessary. So you need either open or closed. And so there's the open again. And in this case, this is arthropods, mollusks, and your heart pumps blood, empties into a little spongy cavity, contacts tissues, travels back to the heart. And in this case, it's not really called blood. We call it hemolymph. So if you squash a bug and you see that mushy, gooey stuff that comes out, and it's not quite red, it's not red like human blood, it's usually kind of white or yellow, that's hemolymph. That's what we call it. And then the advantage of this is that your material is, there's direct exchange with hemolymphin tissues, and there's no diffusion barrier. And the disadvantage is that you have very little fine control over distribution, which in, more evolved animals, we have much more fine control, which is good. We're going to need that as systems get more complicated. So here we've got to move that to read it. So closed circulatory system. This is when it is completely enclosed in vessels, which is what we have. And it's a loop. It's a closed loop. Usually some sort of a pumping organ like a heart or contractile vessels. And you've got vessels that branch into smaller and smaller tubes. And then there's another side of the system with smaller and smaller tubes that branch into larger and larger tubes. So we've got here a single loop. And here is obviously, oh wait, I'm not there yet. Da-da-da. There's more info. So this is with gills, for example, this is what you get. And then here you've got your double loop. So as vertebrates evolved, one pump was not enough to deliver. So they ended up with 2 pumps. Your heart actually has 2 pumping chambers. That's why when you hear it, it goes thump, 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 thump. You've got a right and a left ventricle. Those are your pumping chambers. Your atrium is sort of like a collecting, which is, if you think of an atrium in a building, it's where people gather, right? So it's sort of like a little collecting chamber. Blood flows in, a valve opens, it pours into the ventricle, and then the ventricles will push hard and pump it up. One of them's pumping to lungs, one of them's pumping to the rest of your body. So your left ventricle is actually your strongest because it's the one that's pumping to the rest of your body. So you've got pump from the right side to the left side, going through the lungs and getting oxygenated. Cardiovascular system. So this is putting them both together. Yep.
Can you come back? I think I saw Brian.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. Yeah, what?
Never mind.
Never mind. I was wrong. Okay. Cardiovascular system. So this is basically what the human cardiovascular system looks like. So we're typically dealing with these 3 types of blood vessels. Arteries are the ones you always see in red. So our arteries have oxygenated or deoxygenated blood? Arteries are going to have oxygenated blood. They're going from the lungs to the body, right?
Yeah.
You can remember that if you remember that A is at the beginning of the alphabet and V is at the end and C is in the middle, this will help you. So if you're talking about the beginning, like if you imagine in your head that oxygenated is going to be your starting point, it's going to go from that left ventricle, which is right here, where it's oxygenated, and poof, back out. So whoop, where is it all? Come back. There we go. No. There we go. And then you've got your veins, which are carrying stuff back to the heart, and your capillaries is where the exchange is happening. So your right side is oxygen poor blood, and your left side is oxygen rich blood. Okay, so when you're looking at this, left is on the right and right is on the left, because this would be like if you're looking at a person. But if it's inside your body, left and right, exactly. So each side has a chamber for collection and then a chamber for pumping. So evolution of circulatory systems. So here you can look, you can see how much more complex we get as we go. So we go from sort of like a 2-chamber system to a 3, to another 3, and to our 4 that we have now. And I was going to say, and you can see your little amphibian here. This is what you saw today, right? So now we get to excretion. Told you I tried to find a funny picture for each section. So I don't know. It's a bright day. He's protecting his eyes, Michael. Who's being responsible? Being responsible.
They don't even use their eyesight as much as they ever since.
This is true. So excretion. All right. So, sorry, nitrogenous waste, right? These are primarily nitrogenous waste produced as a result of cellular respiration. And they are typically secreted as ammonia, right? Which is water soluble and toxic. And it's usually released by aquatic organisms. This is why you have to, clean your fish tank, because they release a lot of ammonia and it's not good. You got to get it out of the water because they're living in the water. They're excreting their toxic chemical into, and then they're taking it back in. So you need to prevent that.
Some bacteria can break down ammonia.
Yep, absolutely. Then you got urea. Okay, so this is interesting stuff. So this is ammonia combined with carbon dioxide from the liver. It's less toxic, it conserves water. Most vertebrates are going to release urea diluted as urine. So it's going to be urea in water, kind of managing the homeostasis of water in your body. Obviously, if you drink more, you pee more, right? Drink less, you pee less. Now, when you see bird poop, a lot of the times it's not bird poop, it's urea. So birds pee, basically, urea that's not diluted. For most animals, it's going to be diluted, right? Dogs, cats. And your uric acid is excreted as a paste or crystals, and you see this by birds too, right? So you see that, that's what looks like bird poop. Reptile poop and bird poop look very similar, right? Like that white crystally stuff. Ooh, we're going to get to use it.
It's the stuff that's often dropped on cars.
Yep.
And windshields and everything else.
So the excretory system collects waste, delivers it in organs that will release them from the body. And some animals in wet environments get rid of ammonia by allowing it to diffuse out of their body fluids across their skin. Most larger animals have excretory systems that process ammonia eliminated from the body. Most complex excretory systems are kidneys, invertebrates, and in other animals is things like nephridia, Malpighian tubes, and arthropods. So you do have systems for that in other organisms. So water balance, this is what we're just talking about. So, okay, freshwater animals, saltwater animals. So your excretory system is also not just the way to remove nitrogenous waste, but also the way to remove excess water. Now, there are people like with high blood pressure, for example, that take pills that help them get extra fluid out of their body, because too much fluid is in your blood, in your circulatory system, is going to cause your pressure to be higher because you're packing more liquid into a system that can't expand but so much, right? So those people, it's funny, if you know anybody that takes pills like this, especially if they start taking them, it takes a while to adjust to them. They'll be like, oh, I took my pill 20 minutes ago. Oh my God, where's the bathroom? I gotta pee. Like suddenly they have to pee super fast. And it's kind of funny to watch if it's not you. So I've watched a couple people do it.
It's not you.
No, not you. So freshwater invertebrates lose ammonia through their skin or their exoskeletons. And fish and amphibians eliminate ammonia by diffusion across the gill. So saltwater animals are going to typically release ammonia by diffusion across their body surfaces or gill membranes, so very similar. Many marine, remember marine and aquatic. Marine is a type of aquatic. What's the difference? Marine specifically is what?
Ocean?
Saltwater, ocean. Yep. So they have body fluids with water concentration similar to that of the seawater around them. So that's important. You can't drink seawater, right? Too much salt.
Yeah.
And your body has a certain level of salt that it works with. If you live in salt water, your body is going to have a much higher level of salt inside because you can't get homeostasis if not. So those organisms are meant to function with much higher levels of salt. So then we have terrestrial animals. So land animals can lose large amounts of water by breathing. You lose a ton of water by breathing, which you can see if you're outside in the cold or you're blowing on a window. What do you see?
There's a period and then and.
Oh yeah, I cut and pasted it. I hate that, but I cut and pasted it. I hate it when they do that. That's not how bug. That's not how to start a sentence. But you're right. I should have cut it out. So, oh, I thought you found one too. I'm like, did you just raise your hand? Is it another one of those stupid ladybugs?
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I've gone up there like 4 times in the last 2 weeks.
I'm just watching them just slowly get.
They
closer.
all come out this time of day in your class. They don't come out the rest of the day. They hide. It's so
They
stupid.
like us.
I think I'm gonna have to take the curtain down. I think they're in one of the folds. I
We all
hate them.
bring food.
So anyway, terrestrial invertebrates. Okay. So things like our snails and our arthropods. I like this because it's a snail on a snail. Look at that.
Oh.
I know, right?
Snail,
What's this guy?
Snail kills.
What is?
I was trying to say pounds.
Looks like something like a stick bug.
It's a walking stick. Yep.
Snail bucket.
Looks like a stick that walks. So
That's a
some,
very small stick bug.
yep, some are going to produce urine in nephridia. So these are things like annelids and mollusks. Nephridia are tube-like excretory structures, and they filter body fluid. So waste is going to leave through excretory pores. So insects and arachnids convert ammonia into uric acid. And then there are these things, these Malpighian tubules, absorb uric acid body fluids, all this kind of stuff. You guys read this. Terrestrial vertebrates. All right, cool duck. He's really cool. Look at that guy. Beautiful.
The next trend in fashion is.
Oops. Back. So most terrestrial organisms are going to have kidneys, right? And we saw them today in our little frog, right? We saw kidneys, and you will see kidneys next week in your pig as well.
James, did you cut out one of the kidneys or both or? Okay.
So most cannot excrete salt. Failed me. Somebody pulled it out. It was your dog. I am from Michael. Are you okay there, Sid? Oh yeah, if you didn't know, no more sleeping in class. So I'm not touching you. You okay, Sid? Aim for Michael and it's Sydney. I don't have good aim, so if you see someone in front of you sleeping, you're gonna want to move.
Probably to the side.
Yes, Cole? Yeah. I know,
I was like.
but it's not a firearm.
I was laying my head back. I thought she was getting me. I'm like,
So we got our urea. We went through that. Moving on.
You kind of know her.
So why does ammonia build up in organisms? It's a waste product of your metabolic processes, your respiratory processes. So ammonia is a problem. Why is it a problem?
Because it's toxic.
It's toxic. You don't want it in there. It's not good for you.
It kills you.
So now we're on to the stuff we did in lab today. These fish, amphibians, and reptiles. These are our lower chordates. Slippery, slimy, scaly.
He's staring into my soul.
I like him. He's cute. So phylum Chordata. All right. Any vertebrate classified under subphylum Vertebrata is an animal with a backbone. So this group consists of several broad classes. So your subphylum of Vertebrata is going to be Chordata. And what's going to go in Chordata?
Chordates,
Chordates. What are our chordates?
things with a backbone.
Okay, things with a notochord, things with a nerve cord, basically a dorsal hollow nerve cord. Yeah, they don't have to have a backbone because what are the ones that don't have a backbone? No, well, yeah, invertebrate chordates. But what are they?
Sharks, races.
Sharks, gasteroids, chondrichthyes, right? So you've got fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. These are all going to fall in here. All right. So the word vertebrate you have to have the bony vertebral column. All classes of vertebrate have developed brains, internal skeletons, muscles attaching to skeletons, to eyes, closed circulatory systems. You may have seen some of this today in your frog. Did anybody really look at how the muscles attached and how okay, so there's tendons at the end of a muscle, right?
Yeah.
And a tendon is going to attach a muscle to a bone.
Yeah.
And then you've got bones attached to bones, and that's ligaments. So if like the knee of my frog is pretty well exposed, and you can see where the ligaments attach. Ligaments are like they're really hard. They're white and they're very, that's like when they talk about sinews, like when people talk about, oh, Native Americans use sinews to build bows and arrows. That's what sinews are. It's like tendons and ligaments. That's what you're talking about. Yeah. And interestingly, ligaments and tendons, like you can take a tendon or a ligament and you can kind of sew it back or pin it back if it's been broken or damaged, but they don't regenerate like, you know, skin cells and things like that. So if you break a ligament, it's gone. You're not going to replace that. It's not going to grow back. Like so basically if you sprain your ankle hard enough, sprain is like a stress on a ligament or a tendon, but if you sprain your ankle hard enough to snap a ligament, like you hear the snap, it's done. Like they can take pieces of ligament or tendon from other parts of your body, usually tendon, and then they can reattach it with screws in and stuff, but it won't grow back. So like I actually snapped one of these ligaments on the outside of my right ankle when I was like 13. And sometimes my ankle just twist and I'll fall. I do it all the time because it's a little floppier over there. The muscles will compensate, but those bones are not attached the way they're supposed to be anymore. Like Jason broke his ACL, which is anterior cruciate ligament, and it's in your knee. And the surgery at the time that was all the rage, and a lot of people have done it and have really done well. Like we know friends who've had the same surgery, but they cut your whole knee open this way, and they actually use a piece of your patellar tendon, which is right here, attaches your kneecap, which is your patella, to your other bones. They use a piece of that, and then they put screws in, so they use the tendon to replace the ligament. So there's lots of things you can do, but if you snap that ligament, it's not going to grow back. So these are all things that vertebrates have, things like ligaments and tendons and whatnot. And then you get this. Okay, so this is a very low chordate, but let's look here.
Yes.
You have a notochord right there. See the notochord?
Yeah.
Then you have a dorsal hollow nerve cord. This is your nerve cord. And then you have an endostyle or a thyroid. It depends on what organism you are, which we'll see. This one has an endostyle, which is right here. And then all vertebrates have pharyngeal slits. What are these? We'll learn about them in a minute. And all vertebrates have a postanal tail. All. So chordates get their name from characteristics of the notochord. That's what we're talking about, this dorsal hollow nerve cord. So your chordate, do you have all these things? Let's work through them all. So your notochord, all right, this is your defining structure of all chordates. It's got essential roles. It's super important in your whole nervous system, all that stuff. It's a midline. It's surrounded by all your major skeletal system.
Yeah.
So where's your notochord?
Your spinal cord.
Okay, yeah, pretty close. So you've got this flexible rod of tissue is a notochord, and it's mid-dorsal, so it runs down the center of your back. That's mid-dorsal. Position is occupied by the vertebral column. So in the adult human, for example, all that remains of your notochord is what's inside your intervertebral discs. So when we looked at that diagram I made of the disc and like the stuff oozing out, it's that stuff. That's what the notochord becomes in adult humans. So what else do we have? Central nervous system. So where did that come from? That's your dorsal hollow nerve cord. That is what creates your central nervous system. Your central nervous system is composed of two things.
Your brain and your spinal cord.
Yep, your brain and your spinal cord. So it's a hollow bundle of nerve fibers, transverse, dorsally, longitudinal axis of chordate. So dorsally, longitudinal, up and down, right? Up, down your back, dorsal. And at some stages of their life, it runs above the notochord and the gut. Yours runs above the notochord and the gut. Your gut's here, it's on the top, right? And then it's an embryonic feature known as the dorsal nerve cord, and it transforms into brain and spinal cord. So this is what you get from your dorsal hollow nerve cord. It develops over time into these things. So what about your endostyle or your thyroid? Well, it's a thyroid in you, right? It's an endostyle in some particular organs. So it's an anatomical feature found in invertebrate chordates. That's your endostyle, the thyroid in us. So larval lamprey, for example, and it's an organ which assists chordates in filter feeding. but for us, it's a thyroid, right? So it develops into this over time instead of this kind of weird looking thing. So what do we have next? Okay, where are your gills?
We don't have any
Somewhere in the mouth or up into the ear.
Yep, up into the ear. So pharyngeal slits, right? These are openings in the pharynx, and they aid in aquatic organisms in filtering height. And so they develop into gill arches. But in terrestrial organisms, you had gills, and they developed into your jaw and inner ear. So when you were a 4-week-old embryo and you looked like this, your gill slits were here. By the time you got to be a 24-week-old human fetus, which is not, that's about a little more than halfway through a development of a fetus, you can see that they've become, if you look at this blue one, this becomes Malus and Incus. What are those? Hammer and anvil. You told them hammer and anvil in your inner ear. And then the stapes here, that's the stirrup that comes from this one. And then also this little structure here, and then you get structures around your thyroid that kind of help support everything. So your gills become these structures. So what else? Postanal tail. Where's your tail?
Tailbone.
Your tailbone. But postanal tail specifically says here it extends posterior to the anus. So extends posterior to the anus implies that it's going to move past the anus. So where's yours? Does yours move past your butt?
Legs.
Not really, right? So remember it said it's on stage. So yep,
Yeah.
you had a pretty good tail.
Yeah.
This is a leg bud. So this shows you here, and this is a human embryo. So this is a leg bud, this is an arm bud. So this is your tail, and look how much further back it came. So over time, it's not like this part of your vertebral column is going to shrink, but rather that the rest of this embryo is going to develop around it. And you're going to end up with what we call our tailbone or our coccyx. Ours is not very exciting. It's like just three bones or 4 bones. I think it's very small past your sacrum. But some animals have a super, super long tail, and they're going to use it for balance, right? All kinds of things. So ectotherms and endotherms. So we've got, okay, first off, what's the difference? Ectotherm versus endotherm.
Endotherm is also known as warm-blooded. They regulate your own temperature.
And what's an endotherm?
Endotherm?
No, he just said endotherm. Sorry, what's an ectotherm?
Yeah,
Sorry.
ectotherm is one that relies on its habitat to get its thermal status.
Right. So you have to think of it this way. Endo means in, inside. Ecto means outside. These guys, endotherms, make their own heat inside, whereas ectotherms get their heat from outside. So which are you?
Endotherm.
All right, so let's sort them. Where's the fish go?
Ectotherm.
Ectotherm. Fish is always going to be the same temperature as the water around it. Tropical fish versus like salmon from Alaska obviously live in very different places, right? How about the little sea lion? He's so cute. Where's he going?
Endo.
Okay. And how about the iguana?
Ecto.
All right. And the bird?
Ecto.
Everybody's thinking about this one. If you touch a bird, is it warm?
I don't know.
I don't think
We don't have birds.
bird.
Oh,
Birds are endotherms. They are.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, if you touch a bird, they're warm. And never they get cold. They get cold in the winter. And this little guy, the salamander, sorry,
Ecto.
he's gonna be an ecto. So the reason that you feel cold outside when the weather is cold is because you're warm. It's just like if you walk on a tile floor,
Yeah.
for example, the floor may feel cold to you compared to the air, but it's actually the same as the air. The reason it feels so cold is that it's taking the heat from your body and moving it out into the tile, right? Oh, there's my male and my female. Look at them. Aren't they cute? Whoop, there they go. So a fish, for example, doesn't have the opportunity to feel warm or cold because it's always the same temperature as its environment. But if you go outside and it's really hot, you're going to feel hot because it's hotter than you, right? Basically, that's it. Now, if you wanted to do, like if they do sensory, yeah, right there, Alex. If they do like sensory deprivation, sometimes they'll put you like in water that is exactly body temperature so that you can be completely relaxed and it all feels completely normal to you. And so, hi, Otto. So endotherms can alter metabolic heat production to maintain body temperature. If you're cold, what happens when you're really cold? What does your body start doing?
Shiver.
Shivering. What's the purpose?
Oh, and
Create
goosebumps.
friction.
creating friction, and it makes you warmer. And it's all that muscle metabolic activity that creates heat too. All right, and then how about if you're really hot, what do? You sweat. What does this dog do when he's hot? He's gonna pant, right? Okay. So vasoconstriction and vasodilation. Okay, so you've got shrinking or expansion of blood vessels to the skin that can alter an organism's exchange of heat with the environment. So why do your fingertips get so cold outside when it's cold?
Because they're farthest away from you.
They're farthest away, and then what happens to the blood vessels, do you think, in your fingers?
They shrink.
They do, because your body is trying not to lose heat. So it's gonna start. This is why you can get frostbite, for example. You ever seen people who's like the fingertips turn completely white because they've been outside?
Yeah.
Mhm. And then we have what we call a countercurrent heat exchanger. So this is basically this structure, right? We'll show it to you in a minute, but it's basically allowing heat out, cool in, or the other way around. So some animals have insulation or evaporative mechanisms. So we use evaporative mechanisms like sweating. The dog will pant. What's an example of insulation?
Blubber.
Blubber's a great example. Yeah. What's another one?
I don't know.
Where do you have the
Colored
most
hair.
hair?
Okay.
Why do you suppose it's on your head?
To
Because
protect from sun,
Well, sun, but it's keeping you warm. What part of your body is it keeping warm?
rain.
If you go outside, what part of your body loses the most heat first? They always tell you to put what on? A hat, right?
Rain.
Because your heat loses it. All right. Head loses it. Sorry. Fish, 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 fish. So your defining characteristics of your fish. All right. Now, if you watch, I'm going to point each of these out to you in the little graphic so you know what we're talking about. So fish are aquatic, ectothermic vertebrates, vertebrate, circled it. Ta-da! Now, their body is divisible into 3 sections. You probably saw this with your fish today, right? They have a head, they have a trunk, they have a tail. Also, they're spindle shaped. This is what we call spindle shape or fusiform. Okay. So it has like wide in the middle and narrow at both ends. That's a fish, pretty much. It's fusiform.
What about the fish that aren't actually vertebrates? The sharks aren't they fish?
They are sort of, I mean, they're not mammals like we say. They are a type of fish. Chondrichthyes will come under the category of fish, but they're still fusiform. So they're sort of the exception to the backbone. It's kind of a weird categorization thing. This is mostly osteichthyes right here. So they've also got scales, which you saw today. Everybody saw their scales. They respire with gills. And on their head is a pair of nostrils. Everybody saw a pair of nostrils on their fish? Yep,
I
pretty
think
clear.
James stuck a probe up one of them.
James probably did. James was digging the dissection today. They have a pair of eyes. Now you've noticed some fish have eyes here. You ever see like a flounder? They're flat, their eyes are on the top, right? And they have a swim bladder. Now, if you looked at my fish, the whole top half of it was like completely hollow. And that's because that's where the swim bladder was. It's not actually hollow, it's full of air. And I had broken it open, but if you were in the water, it would be full of air, which would keep you buoyant and steady in the water, which is the purpose. And then they have fins for movement, dorsal fins, right? You saw your dorsal fin on your fish, pectoral fin, where your pecs are, your chest, right? Anal fins, and then this caudal fin at the end. So here are your classes of fish. So yes, here's your chondrichthyes. That's going to be your, and these guys too, actually, both of these are going to be your exceptions. So your agnathans, these are some of my favorites. I love these. These are lampreys and hagfish. We call them jawless fish. They're jawless. So their jaws are absent. Their paired fins are absent. And they're an early species, heavy bony scales, plates, but these are not present in the living species. Living species, no, that's there. So in most cases, they're cartilaginous, like these guys. And they have an embryonic notochord, of course, because they're chordates. 7 or more paired gill pouches. There they are. Digestive system lacks a stomach. I think these guys are freaking cool. Look at that here. James, wouldn't you like to stick a probe right in there? Look at that. That is freaking awesome. So cool. I love them. So lamprey and hagfish, Cole's like, I'm not going to throw up. That's disgusting. And then we have chondrichthyes, which I also think are great. Shark skates, rays. So cartilaginous endoskeleton. Endoskeleton. What's an endoskeleton?
skeleton inside of you.
Skeleton on the inside. What do you have? Do you have an endoskeleton?
Endoskeleton.
Yeah, what does a bumblebee have?
Ectoskeleton.
Exoskeleton, yep,
So,
there you go.
Transformers.
So, yes, there you go.
I thought it was a transformer.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm like, what kind?
What does
Yeah.
he have?
He went from being like a cheesy Volkswagen Bug to a Camaro. I don't get it. So anyway, ventrally located mouth. Your mouth is ventral too.
They can just scan another car and become
Yeah,
a car.
exactly. So they have a ventrally located mouth, which means it's on bottom half, right, not the top. They've got a notochord throughout life, right? Gills are not covered by operculum. You don't need to worry about that much. And they have no air bladder. Sharks, skates, and rays have no air bladder. Yeah,
The only picture I don't see is a skate. What is a skate?
it's very similar to a ray.
Okay.
It's
I
just
know-
like
I know
a-
what that is. Never
Yeah,
seen
it's
it.
very,
And there's no picture. for
usually
it.
it's around 4 wheels.
That's it, I'm
Sometimes
like-
made of wood.
Some are inline.
so osteichthyes. It's easy to remember because it's bony fish. If you notice, we have ichthyes and ichthyes here. These are like our fish that look like fish, whereas these guys have no fins, right? So-
Osteo is bone.
Yep, and chondric is cartilage, so this makes perfect sense. Bony fish. They have a skeleton of bone, they've got jaws, all this good stuff. They've got scales. Y'all saw that today. Do these guys have scales? Sharks?
No.
Not really, not the same way.
They have
They have
some have like teeth on the outside of their
Mhm.
bone.
And they have like the way their skin is made, like if you rub one direction is different than the other, but it's not scale like we saw
Like-
today.
Rub one way, it's fine. Rub the other way, you can cut your hand open.
One pair of gill openings, one on each side, jaws. All right, and then paired nostrils. So here's a beta, here's a
Puffer fish.
puffer. So cute. Amphibians. I gotta love this guy. Look at this dude.
Ribbit,
He is cute. Now my neighbor has these and she was trying to give some to me last year. And I was like, dude, I can't deal with that right now. But she had too many. Like she had all kinds of little different tropical frogs. I'm not sure if it was this exact kind, but
That's cool.
I know. So defining characteristics of amphibians. You probably saw most of these today. Vertebrates, of course, slimy and smooth skin. You saw that, right? Now some are not so slimy and smooth.
Too.
Yeah, like a toad. A toad is very terrestrial compared to a lot of amphibians. So they're not as slimy or smooth, right? All right, how about breathing through their lungs and their skin? Ectotherms, complex life cycle. You know this, right? You learned this in kindergarten. And they have a lot of them vocalized. Now, if you find a toad outside, all right, if you find a toad outside and you want to know you have a boy toad or a girl toad, there's two things you can do. One of them, you kind of need a basis for comparison, but they have digits like here, right? And they have these things called thumb pads, which are like these kind of thick areas on their little hands. And the boys' thumbs and thumb pads are a little different, but you kind of have to compare them to a female toad. But they're different because even though these guys fertilize externally, very often the males do still like mount the females and hold on to them. And that's part of the whole courtship process. But that's why their thumbs are that way, because they will literally grab on to them and not let them go. The other way to tell is this little tympanum, this little tympanic membrane, the eardrum that's on the outside. If you take your little toad and you put your fingers on each side like this, or like that on him, basically, a girl toad will do nothing, a boy toad will start croaking because you've just messed with his, and it's primarily the males that vocalized, right? So you're messing with his environment. He's like, hello, hello. So they're the ones that make the most noise. Yep. And they're going to fertilize externally. Most of them are. Remember, I told you if you're looking for frog eggs to watch them grow, you want the kind that are all looking one direction like this. This means they've been fertilized. If they're not looking one direction, they have not been fertilized yet.
There's a single one that isn't.
Yep, this one right here did not get no sperm to you. No sperm for you. So amphibian circulatory system. We have the 3-chambered heart, which we saw today. Oops, and their life cycle, sorry, which you all know. Orders of amphibians. It's kind of hard to tell. Now, next week, if you're very careful with your dissection, and you should be good to go. I'm going to do my pig similar to how I did the frog. I'm going to take it apart so you can see everything and stretch parts out like I did. Try not to remove any part, but separate them. And next week, you guys are going to be really careful because you're going to have little flags, and the flags have numbers or flag pins, like kind of a map. And you get like heart, and you're going to have to pin that so I know where it is. But I'll open mine up if I can, and that way you guys can see. So your orders of amphibians, you have Caudata, you have Anora, and then you have Apoda. Okay, these are cool. So these are salamanders and newts, tetrapods, 4 limbs, 3-chambered heart. You know what salamanders and newts are. Yeah, all right. So these guys are your frogs and toads.
Ribbit.
You know what these are. Vocalizations are usually the males, right? So they're cool. Now, let me ask you this. Just looking at the name, these Sicilians, just looking at the name, what do you think might be the case? A poda. What's pod or poda? Feet. What's a?
Without feet.
Without feet. Very good. You figured it out. So Sicilians are these freaking cool things, which I would love to see in real life, and I've never seen them, but they live in tropical areas, which is why not. They're subterranean. They live under the ground. They're really cool. They are amphibians that look like worms or snakes. Look at that. They have no legs.
Basically amphibious snake.
Yeah. So they actually, it's so cool. Their eyes can be covered by skin or bone. And like this, initial growth of the fetus is supported by a yolk sac. Embryos feed on uterine milk. This is such a weird thing, secreted from the epithelial walls of their oviduct. That is just wild. These guys are just so weird. They're kind of a mishmash of other things.
They're
Like the
literally-
platypus.
Look at his face.
They literally have
That's
the
cool.
similarities of everything, but also completely different.
Yeah,
from
they're
everything.
really neat. So now reptiles. Let's move on to reptiles. We got about 12 minutes left. Oh, look at the face. Aren't these cute? Right? They are freaking cute. What? So here's your characteristics of your reptiles. Y'all with me? All right, characteristics of your reptiles. So this is a turtle, obviously. You can see that its spine, its vertebrate, is going to be kind of right here as part of its shell area, right? And they're all vertebrates, obviously. Their bodies are covered with scales. Think about this skin. It's actually scales. It's not scales like a fish, or a snake's a little different too, but they all have some degree. Yeah, even the little guys in there, the two little lizards in there, they have some kind of scales. Ectotherms. Yep. And yeah,
Yes.
that's a little thermometer.
Looks like sperm.
Ectotherm. So they produce shelled eggs or bear live young. There are some snakes, for example, that bear live young, but it's almost like their eggs develop inside because they don't have like a uterus and a placenta like mammals do. Well, placental mammals do. So it's almost like their little eggs hatch inside and then the live snakes come out, as opposed to putting eggs in the ground. Now, reptile eggs compared to amphibian eggs. Somebody tell me what's the difference? Think-
Reptile eggs have more of a shell, they're often leathery.
Yeah, very good. So if you're moving from water to land, you need a way to conserve moisture. And one way to do it is to put your egg in some type of a shell, because the membrane that surrounds an amphibian egg is not, it'll dry out really fast. So the shells that amphibians have are leathery. Reptiles have are leathery. So think about it. Where do turtles put their eggs?
Beach.
But what do they live them on the surface? Do they bury them? So why are they doing it? Keep the moisture in. A lot of it is to keep the temperature correct. Both things. Do you know that some turtles, for example, like box turtles and things, I believe box turtles are one species, but if they box turtles are actually tortoises because they're land dwelling, not turtles, those which are aquatic. But they will dig a little hole and put their little eggs in and leave. The temperature determines whether they're male or female, the offspring. If it's too high or too low, you'll get female versus male. It's so cool.
And that turtle appears to be a sea turtle.
Yeah, this is an aquatic turtle. Yeah, look, oh, look at the face. I mean, sorry, that's adorable.
I don't like
So-
And most likely that turtle's gonna get eaten.
So they produce shelled eggs or bear live young. All species fertilize internally, so they have to get together. It can't be like frogs where like she lays the eggs and he comes by and fertilizes them and that's it. No, these guys, you have to get together. And then we go on to these guys, squamata. These are our lizards and snakes. Testudines. This is a fun one. Anybody want to try it?
No.
Rhynchodelphilia. I always do it every time. And then crocodilia. All right, so squamata. These are our lizards and snakes. So think about the first thing here. Uniquely jointed, highly mobile skull. How does a little snake get a massive meal in? They can like unhinge their jaws, right? Snakes, and they take it. You ever seen like a picture of like a python that's eating a deer? I mean, that's
Or a
crazy. Yeah, or a pig, but they do it, right? They have 3-chambered hearts, and their young don't go through any kind of larval stage. They just hatch, right? And then you've got, or in some cases, live young, you got testudines. So these are things like turtles, terrapins, tortoises. Your main difference between turtles, terrapins, and tortoises are turtles are aquatic, and they have the big flipper fins like this dude. tortoises and terrapins are land dwelling. So technically your box turtle is a tortoise. Most things you see on land are going to be tortoise. They don't have teeth, internal fertilization. Their eggs are amniotic. These are like the first that have kind of like an amniotic egg, which means it has liquid in the little yolk and the little embryo developing inside. That's like a chicken egg is amniotic.
Is that a Galapagos turtle?
I think it is. These are cool. We're going to come back to these in a minute. But crocodilia, these are going to be your ectotherms. So a lot of these have body armor. Think about like an alligator, right? And a muscular tail and all these things. And we're going to come back to these in a second too. But let's look at these. Tuataras. There is one living organism on the entire planet that belongs to this order. One. And it lives in one place in the entire world. Yeah. Yep, New Zealand. So you know about them. These guys are freaking cool. They have no ears. The males have no reproductive organ. So reproduction occurs by the pair rubbing their cloacas together. It's like a cloaca party. And the female can store sperm for 10 to 12 months before she decides to, let it have some action. And then they can lay their eggs 1 to 19 of these little eggs in these little burrows. And then the eggs will incubate for 12 to 15 months. That's a long, long time. Longest of any reptile. They have a third eye. This is so cool. It's a photosensitive organ, right on the tippy top of their head. And it's so cool because it doesn't see like an eye, because it doesn't have like a lens and focusing, but it senses light and dark, and it's right on the top of their head. And if you look this up, if you look up this particular, where's the name for it? I'm gonna put it there. Anyway, there are lots of organisms that actually have a similar structure, but it's just really obvious in these guys. And we'll have a little video on them in a minute. So how do you tell your alligators from your crocodiles, from your caimans, from your gavials? So alligators are all we have here in North America, right? If you see something else that's not an alligator, it doesn't belong here. Yeah.
I
always lose it.
Between gators and crocodiles, it's the teeth poking out is a good way.
Also,
Teeth and head shape. So here's your Mississippi alligator. So alligator from the top, see that is just sort of like a little spear shaped thing, but there's no extraordinary narrowing, whereas there here is with the crocodile. What you got?
The wild cats use alligators are used and crocodiles are used.
Alligators are what?
Like you.
U? Oh, like a U. Yeah. And crocodiles are a V. That's a good way to put it. This is a U shape. That's a V shape. Wow. Wild cats. That's where I'm at. So then you can also look at the way their teeth line up. You see how you primarily have this one row of teeth? Whereas if you look at the crocodile, you got these bottom teeth coming up, like sticking out like that.
They look scary.
And then this is a Nile crocodile. And then you've got gavials and caimans. We have caimans at the zoo, by the way. They're smaller and they're really kind of cute because their little heads are like little round heads. But you can see them from above. And then these guys, they have like a spear. We have these at the zoo too, I think. So here's our tuatara. My goodness, are they
very
cute?
great advertising.
It's not a lizard.
You have to say
Play.
it's not-
Come on, video, do your thing. Hello. Oh, it's just gonna not do.
That was a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
It was. Okay, this one doesn't want to play for whatever reason, but it will be in your email. Does this one want to play? What's the problem here? Oh my.
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
And then this guy, why aren't we playing?
This man
Okay, I can do it this
is
way.
here.
He's confusing with my list.
So these last three, we'll play one. We'll play the Tuatara one now. But you should look at these. All right. This one talks about why, if you're a dinosaur fan, you should be paying attention to birds. But let's look at this guy here. I can play it this way. I should be able to. Why is it not going? Why is the okay? Hang on.
You put a picture of
I didn't have a problem with it over here.
It's not a lizard.
It's not a lizard.
It's not a lizard.
All right. That's gonna go. There it goes. So here's our Tuatara.
So cool.
I was watching this reptiles video on YouTube. You don't know who that is. He's an amazing biologist who focuses on herpetology, the study of reptiles and amphibians. I watch him because as a reptile keeper, I like to learn new things. And something I learned today is that there's another group of reptiles out there I knew nothing about. Everybody knows snakes, lizards, turtles, and even aliens. But what if I told you there's another group? The Tuataras. ago, I made a video about the Sheltopusik, the snake that's not a snake. In that video, I pointed out the key visible features that make it clear that the Sheltopusik was actually a lizard. You could tell just by the face it was not a snake. However, when you look at a tuatara, it's hard to argue that it is anything other than a lizard, though it's not. Reptiles stem from the class Reptilia. Two branches split off. There are Reptilia, which are now all extinct, and Eureptilia. Under Eureptilia, you get the Sauria classification, which contains the most recent ancestors to modern reptiles. I'm about to mispronounce all of these names. Within Sauria, you get the Archosauriformes, aka crocodiles, birds, and various extinct dinosaurs. Yes, I said birds. Birds are in fact reptiles.
Not totally, but
Then
good for him.
Testudie, turtles, squamata, lizards and snakes. Then lastly, oh boy, I know I'm gonna butcher this. Rhynchocephalia. Anyways, this group only has one remaining living member, the tuatara, which is not considered a lizard. So why the heck is it not a lizard? Well, when it was first classified in 1831 by John Edward Gray, he classified it as an agamiid lizard, like a bearded dragon. In 1867, Albert Gunther said, "Wait a darn second, that's not an agamiid, it got weird features. Let's give the thing its own classification." So they did, because science. Now, because science is not really a good enough answer, and I feel you guys would probably leave me some angry comments below if I just left the video at that. So here's why these animals are not considered lizards. Short answer, they're evolutionarily different. Long answer, body structure. Tuataras have crystalia, which are rib-like bones that only crocodilians also have. This was kind of the giveaway that tuataras were not modern lizards, or actually more related crocodiles, which are way older on the evolutionary chain, despite having a very lizard-like form. There are many other traits the scientists found over time to further prove that they're not lizards. So now that we know that tuatara is sadly on its own little island, let's talk about where the tuatara live.
On
That's
its own little
actually on the
island.
island.
Literally.
So more specifically, the various little islands around the North Island of New Zealand. Its population on the Brothers Islands below the Northern Island of New Zealand, between the North and South Island of New Zealand as well. New Zealand. Now, typically, when I cover an interesting reptile on this channel, there's always something sad about it, like the fact that tuataras were almost completely extinct due to Polynesian rats. It's always the rats. However, New Zealand said kauri and decided instead to wipe out the rats. Today, there are about 60,000 to 100,000 tuataras in the wild. They're a protected species, and there are various attempts to breed them and get their numbers even higher.
You like gloves?
Common, or easy, and they've also been found again in 2008 on the North Island's mainland, believed to be the first in 200 years. Honestly, New Zealand really loves these little lizards, I mean not lizards, and they wish to protect them. They are glad of their kind, and hopefully they live on for centuries more to come. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, take care.
They're fun little guys. They're cool. That would be awesome research project for anybody who hasn't picked one yet, by the way. Just saying. All right. So y'all look good. Be sure that you check everything in the email. If you follow everything, watch those videos that we didn't have time to do, you should be good.